So our next speaker is going to be Janne Lindqvist. I hope I never cleared the pronunciation. He's a relatively new research faculty at WinLab at Rutgers University, and doing some really interesting and exciting work, and also just had a couple of successful proposals funded. So he's going to talk a bit about the work and the process as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, so I was also one of the people saying that, well, I'm not sure am I really a success. I got some funding, but okay. I'm going to talk about nudging people, which is my overarching theme for my research. And I also thought this is a fitting theme for this talk because what you're doing is when you're writing a proposal and submitting it, what you actually want to do is nudge people. So you want to compel your reviewers and ultimately the program manager, director, and their bosses to give you funding. So starting with that is that I would like you to read this. So I want all my talk at least to have one specific takeaway, what I call a nugget, and you really should read this. So this has been mentioned in different forms during the presentations already, but this is really important. And like Albert also mentioned, what is really great about NSF is that they have everything available on their websites. So your proposal, you should say, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? So why is this important enough to be funded? How do you plan to do it? How you will know how you succeed, and what are the benefits, broader impacts. Now, myself, I have submitted a couple of proposals, and as like mentioned, funded. I have only reviewed one so far. So this was an in-mail request, and since I was a new PI, I was like, oh, you really need to do a proper job on this. So I read through what I was supposed to be doing, and then I reserved time to do that really well. So I reserved one evening that I will do this after my daughter, who's 10 months old, has gone to sleep, that I'll focus on this. And I kind of regret that I was so careful on this because after I had been reading and focused on the proposal, I could have just spent 15 minutes on the proposal and do that during lunch break, because it was evident that the proposer didn't answer most of these questions. There was some vague description about the field, but no, why do I want to do this? What is important about this wasn't mentioned at all, and especially how. Just represented challenges. These are challenges, but didn't talk at all about, well, how am I going to? And then there was other things mentioned that you should have your proposals. So just an example, your reviewers have other things to do. They have their families, other lives. They want to work on their own proposals. Don't make their job too easy. Read and at least address these things in your proposal. Okay, so that's my nugget. So I'm now going to talk a bit about my own research. So my large-scale agenda is that I want to apply soft nudges to human behavior with computer systems. And I'm not the behavioral scientist. I know I'm actually an engineer. My degrees are in computer science and engineering. But I just got fascinated about working on this, and I learned about this during my postdoc at Carnegie Mellon. So another way to put this, what is my work, is that instead of trying to really enforce, like security is often weird as like, no, you can't do this, we'll put an access control there. What I want to do is more like, pretty please, with sugar on top, don't do this. Okay. So my research interests are practical problems. So problems that exist today in the real world. And in ordinary people's lives, or at least people's lives that use smartphones. So that might cut some of the people who are ordinary but use still legacy phones. Also, I want to go beyond weird people Western educated industrials, rich and democratic. So this, if you have been following, there's a really great paper about this from the behavioral sciences domain, that lots of studies in the behavioral sciences are based on results that the 20 undergrads that attended your class. So I want to do at least a bit better than that in my research. So what is my method? I spotted some problem, a real world problem. Then I start studying, do some preliminary studies about behavior attitudes toward this problem. I implement the software system. I recruit people to use the system and see what happens. And do this in a very systematic way. Excuse me. So I'm just going to motivate a bit more, like what kind of real problems I'm talking about. So this is not about security, but one of the things that I'm working on is also distracted driving. And this is very easy to motivate because mobile, for example, mobile phone use kills people and also it results in injuries. So just the numbers from 2008 are pretty crazy. And for that, I'm using mobile phones, like we'll be talking more on security. So just to motivate quickly what kind of things I'm looking at. Now, coming back to the method and now focusing on security. So sometimes the problems just present themselves. You don't even need to go look for them. So Wall Street Journal had this, they wrote about what are problems with mobile applications. Actually, we had been looking at this problem before Wall Street Journal did all the publications, and we had been focusing first on, well, understanding it. Well, they published this about this, so then we needed to refocus our focus. Now, okay, so we have spotted the problem. So then the next question, well, why is this important? Well, because application markets are huge. You have lots and lots of apps, and you have lots of ordinary people using the apps with their smartphones. So these are just the numbers from January of this year. There's plenty of apps, more apps available today. Okay, so the problem is, so what are your apps really doing? Two examples, Bandera, a really popular music playing application, shares your location, gender, unique phone ID, phone number with advertisers. Facebook, on the other hand, uploads your entire contact list to their server, including phone numbers. Now, I'm not taking a side that is this malicious or not in a sense, but this is what they're doing. So for example, Facebook does this in order to help you to build your social network. Would you want that to be done or not? That's a separate question. Now, so that was kind of the top level problem. Now, more specifically, is that, well, for example, the Android platform would like people, when they see this example screen, for example, the Google Matrix app, they would like people to make a decision that, well, should I install the application or not? But in practice, people don't do that. So we know from lots of other previous research, it's like, well, because this is not my main task, I'll just go ahead and install it. We might also want people to consider questions that, what do these permissions mean? Why does app need this permission? Or when does it use these permissions? But you don't also get that information from the default screen. So, next part of the method, study behavior or attitude. So this part of the project was already published in Ubicomp, and we got some publicity for the project even before it was published. Now this was preliminary work for a proposal, and here's another nugget here. You want to really carefully describe your preliminary work in your proposal, because if you're going ahead with publishing that, and if it gets attention, then instead of getting an email that, well, we are going to be recommending your proposal if you do this and this and this, you might be getting an email that, which is very polite and nice, but will essentially say, doctors, you have some explaining to do. So this was our fault. We didn't really well articulate in our proposal, so what are the preliminary work that is well done. Okay, but the question was, so what we want to do is, can we use crowdsourcing? So, like I already said, almost nobody reads privacy policies. So we want to install the app. And like I said, reading policies is not part of the main task. Also, it's complex, so it's boring. Why would I want to read that? And there's no clear benefit from reading it. So we don't know what goes wrong if I don't read it and I just accept it. So crowdsourcing can mitigate these problems, but what do we crowdsource here? And our idea was here that expectations and misconceptions. So what is privacy as expectation? So we apply idea of mental models for privacy. So we compared what people expect in an app and what an app actually does, and emphasize the biggest gaps and misconceptions. So app behavior, what it does, and user expectations, what people think they do. So for example, if you have a chess game, do you expect that it will need your location and also use that location to show you advertisements? So for this, we proposed, when we studied this, new way to show these permissions. So we simplified them, bolded some of them. So instead of saying that we need your fine-grained or coarse-grained location, we talk about approximate location or precise location. We added warning signs if you're above the threshold, sorted by the highest surprises. So use the crowdsort to find out what people were most surprised about and focus on those. And focus only on the ones that affect privacy. So, okay, so we kind of know this. We did this in a way, mock-up online study. But now the next part is here that we really need to implement this as a software system and do a real large-scale analysis. So even though we have published already, it's just the first really small part that, well, this approach might be effective. And then when we have built the system, which is most of our work about, we need to recruit people with crowdsourcing mechanisms and then see that, well, does this approach really work for real? So before I run out of time, I would like to mention about preparing the proposal nugget again. So, and then the summary, I focus on nudging people. So, any questions?
Okay, thanks. We'll switch back to the